Hello, and thank you for having me. Hope you can hear me at the back. Am I standing close enough to the mic? Usually I'm giving a talk in the back of a pub somewhere or something, so this is quite fancy. So this evening's talk, I'll give a brief overview of the Portable Antiquities Scheme, what my job entails as a finds liaison officer, and then I'll give a brief kind of overview of the legislation of the Treasure Act 1996, and then talk about some local finds, some from the Wolverhampton area, and then kind of further afield, so Staffordshire, Worcestershire, Warwickshire, and so on. I'll just say a little bit about me, because often people say, well, how did you get the job as a finds liaison officer? What did you study to enable you to do the job? So I studied archaeology and heritage studies at Worcester University, which unfortunately they've recently closed the course, so it's no longer available to study there, which is a shame. There's quite a few archaeology units across the universities in the country that are closing. Although there's lots and lots of archaeology jobs, and obviously HS2 just employs, I think, the largest amount of archaeologists ever. So there's definitely archaeology jobs out there, but unfortunately they're closing the university department. So I was very lucky to study at Worcester. And then whilst I was studying, I started volunteering with the Portable Antiquities Scheme. And then when I finished my university studies, I took a paid internship up in Dudley, and then my now job share colleague was having a baby, so I took maternity leave. So that's how I got into the role. So I'm part of a team across the West Midlands. As you'll see, we've kind of, there's the four of us, so we cover Staffordshire, Shropshire, Herefordshire, Warwickshire, Worcestershire, West Midlands, and we also have find assistants. So our role, our title is finds liaison officer. I often have to say that carefully because people think I say finds as in parking fines, so it's finds with a D. And we have assistants, and we now have treasure assistants, which help us do the role as well. So some of you may have heard of the Portable Antiquities Scheme, some may not have done, but you may recognise some of these objects on the screen. So often we're the first point of call when an interesting treasure find has been discovered. So as a finds liaison officer, they come to us in our office first of all, and then it's our job, if it's a treasure case, to report them to the local coroner. So there's a few cases up on the screen behind me that you might recognise. The Staffordshire hoard, which is 4,000 items of gold and garnets, and that's on display usually at the Birmingham Museum, but the museum is currently closed for refurbishment, but you can see that at the Potteries Museum. So the scheme originally started as a pilot scheme, so it was originally funded by the National Heritage Lottery Fund, and it's now funded by the DCMS, so Department of Culture, Minister and Sport. So we get our funding comes from the government, and then it is paid to the British Museum, and then they funnel the money out across the country to employ people like myself. So it kind of evolved off the back of the Treasure Act 1996. And the understanding was that all the treasure finds were being reported and recorded, but what happened to all the other objects? So they developed the scheme, as I say, initially as a pilot scheme, and all the finds that came in, we had handwritten records, and then eventually, obviously we've gone digital now, and we have a database which now has over 1.6 million archaeological objects on it, so it's now the largest archaeological database of its kind in the world. So what do we do? Do we just record a load of old rubbish? Or we record finds that are kind of casual losses, chance finds, they may be deliberately deposited in the ground, 98% of the objects we record are found by metal detectorists, and then also members of the public, or during COVID we had a gardener that was digging his raspberries and found a medieval coin. So we never quite know what objects are going to come in, who's going to bring them in, from when or where. So predominantly we record metallic objects. We do also record pottery and lithics, so handwork flints. And the kind of metallic objects we see lots of coins, buckles, brooches, kind of tokens, lots of kind of casual losses that would have been used by everyday people, and that's what I love so much about the job, is that they're kind of buckles and buttons that would have been worn by everybody. So I'll just show you, this is what our website looks like, and where you can access our database. So it's freely accessible. Sorry, it's a bit small. So it's finds, www.finds.org.uk. So we have the database is accessible from the website, but there's also lots of other information on there. So we have finds guides, information on specific coins. If you were looking up a Roman coin, for example, you can look up the emperor type. We have lots of information for detectorists, so how to care for their finds, how to clean them, and then how to look after them afterwards. So yeah, have a look at our database. As I say, you can, it's freely accessible. All the images and the records are freely accessible for the public. So this is what one of our typical records looks like. So this is the kind of bread and butter of my job. So in this case we've got a Roman brooch. So predominantly, as I say, a metal detectorist would bring in, for example, this brooch. So I photograph it. So all sides are photographed. And then we write a written report. And then we take the measurements. And then we kind of research the object and we look for parallels. So that's what a typical record looks like that you'll find on our database. So as I say, everything's photographed, so the idea is that the objects are not, they don't belong to us, they still belong to the finder unless they are treasure. So it's to try and get as much information as we can, so photograph it, get a detailed report. Because once we've given that object back to the finder, we'll probably never see it, and if it goes into their private collection, it might not ever be seen again, or they might decide to sell it on. So we try and get as much information as we can before we leave the object. Most importantly, we have find spots for each object that is reported to us. Without an accurate find spot, the object, it doesn't tell the full story. You don't get the full biography of the object. What's interesting is where it's come from, what the location is. Is it a market site? Is it a place of occupation? Was it just a path that somebody walked and dropped something along it? So the find spot is really important to us, and we do protect that information. And so as a member of the public, when you look at our database, that is, it's made private within a 1 kilometre square grid, and that's just to mainly stop kind of night walkers potentially going to the site. So lots of people use our data. As I say, it's freely accessible to the public. Lots of researchers use it. As I say, we're now the largest archaeological database of its type in the world. So if you have a specific interest, or you want to have a look at a specific area, you could look, for example, you could just type in Roman coin and find a big search of all the Roman coins that we've recorded. Or you could look at a specific place. So we've got an advanced search on our database. So, for example, you could look at Bilston and look at all the objects that have been found within the area. So So part of my role, as I say, the bread and butter is recording those archaeological objects, but we also get involved in other projects. So we hold regular find days, metal detecting clubs. That's where the majority of the finds come into as we go out to metal detecting clubs. And we also get involved in projects. I don't know if you've seen the River Hunters, that was on TV recently. So we acted as the kind of find identification. So we set up a WhatsApp group, and everything that was being found out of the river as it was being pulled out, we were getting sent photos, and then we were acting as identification for that. We also host volunteers. As I say, I started as a volunteer myself, so volunteers help us put all the records onto the database and do the digital photography. It's quite a time-consuming process, so if you've got an object, say something like the brooch, where we take 6 sides and then we have to stitch them together and use Adobe Photoshop, which we then upload onto the record. So it's quite a time-consuming process to upload the record. So a little bit about the Treasure Act. So as I say, Treasure Act 1996. So if you find something in this country and it's over 300 years old and predominantly gold or silver for an object type, there is a legal obligation to report it to the coroner. So we help administer the Treasure Act. So the object will come to us and then we write to the coroner and advise them that treasure has been found in the area, and then we help write the report as well. So it's just a kind of ancient thing that's fixed, really, that the coroner deals with things buried in the ground. So they deal with people buried in the ground and treasure buried in the ground as well. So that's why it's the coroner that deals with treasure. So in 1996, the Treasure Act came into fruition because previously it was the old treasure trove laws, so they hadn't been changed since the time of King John, I believe. So previously it was only treasure that had been buried with an intent to recover it that was reported. So the idea was that there was obviously lots and lots of casual losses of things that were buried and not meant to be recovered, that weren't being reported and kind of saved for the nation and put on display in local museums. So my role as part of the Treasure Act and help administer it is, obviously, as I say, to write to the coroner, and then we have to raise a treasure number. So each treasure case has a special treasure number, and then we have to write to the landowner. So if an object is declared treasure, the landowner and the finder usually split any reward, kind of 50-50. So in the case of the Staffordshire hoard, the finder and the landowner had £1 million each. That was their reward for finding that. We don't get involved in valuations, by the way. There's a treasure valuation committee that are based at the British Museum. So that's a valuation committee that's made up of people from auction houses, curators, so they deal with the valuation process. So sometimes if someone emails me and says, "What's this worth?" I say, "I don't know, we only deal with the archaeological value, not the monetary value." So as I say, in this country, if you have an object that's predominantly gold or silver, at least 10% by weight, and over 300 years old, then it could potentially be treasure. I'll just say the object on the bottom right, that was a brooch that was discovered in Northamptonshire, back to medieval, and that's now on display in the Victoria Allnatt Museum. So if you find coins, if they are silver or gold, it must be 2 or more discovered together, and if they're copper alloy, it's 10 or more found together. And then in 2002, the objects of prehistoric date were added as a designation order to the Treasure Act. So objects that kind of photographed the Bronze Age axe heads. So if you found 2 or more discovered together, then they're potential treasure as well. And then also any object that was previously treasure trove. So some of you may have heard about the piano hoard that was found in Ludlow. You might have seen it on the news. So that was over 900 gold sovereign coins that were discovered inside a piano. So I think a call was put out by a primary school. They needed a piano for their music room. So a couple donated the piano. It needed a bit of tuning. Piano tuner came in, thought, yeah, this doesn't sound right, lifted the keys and found packages of gold sovereigns inside. So when that went to the coroner's court, as I say, the treasure trove laws, it's objects that were buried with the intent of recovery. And they had around 50 people that came forward and said, yes, I remember that piano, it was my great auntie's, blah, 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 and the coins belonged to me. But very specifically, the coins were wrapped in cereal packets. And we were able to contact, the name's gone out of my head, but there's the Museum of Brands in Notting Hill in London. So they were able to trace the packaging, and the packaging came from the 1920s. So although the coins were dated, they were older, they were buried sometime after the 1920s, because we were able to date that cereal packaging. So as I say, our job's interesting, keeps us on our toes, and we never know what's going to come in. And then more recently, it comes into fruition on the 30th of July. There's a new designation order that's being added to the Treasure Act. So it's they can't change the main legislation as such, but they can add in a designation. So they'll be adding in objects that are significantly important and connected to a place or a person. They only need to be 200 years old and of precious metal. And the idea was to save an object like the one that's photographed, and that's the Britannicus figure. And it's a small little copper alloy figure dated to the Iron Age. And it's interesting because you'll see the cloak. So it's kind of a native Iron Age cloak, whereas most of the figures that we have reported from that time period show the Roman dress, so kind of tunics and a very kind of Roman style of dress. So this is an unusual object, but under the current Treasure Act 1996, it's not covered because it's, although it's 300 years old, it's not predominantly made of precious metal. So the new designation order is to kind of save objects like this for the nation, for the future, and hopefully see them in museums. So I'm going to show you lots of finds now. So I've done the bit where I talk about legislation and past that bit. So I've chosen some finds from the kind of immediate area and then from wider area of the Midlands. So this was a silver denarius coin that's found in the Wolverhampton area, and it dates to Vespasian. He's quite easy to identify when you get a coin because he's got quite a chunky neck. So if you see a coin with a chunky necked emperor, there's a chance that it might be Vespasian. And seated on the reverse is pax, so peace. So at that time, obviously the emperors were very keen to show that although they were kind of conquering across the empire, they also came in peace as well. So it's not a very unusual coin for to be recorded, but predominantly the coins, the majority of the Roman coins we see are from the 4th century, so a later date, and of copper alloy. So this is slightly unusual that it's slightly earlier coin and made of silver. Next we have a lead die. They were obviously used for a long period of time, but we can look at the configuration. So usually a modern die, they add up to 7. So you've got a 6 and a 1 on the reverse, add up to 7. And then the earlier types, they don't add up on the opposite sides. So based on other finds that come from the area, we can say it's possibly Roman or it could be medieval. This is a papal bulla, so again it's made from lead, and it's used to seal documents that were sent by the Pope. I'll show you on the next slide. So this is kind of a document, and then it was sealed with a hemp rope, and it became a kind of standardised form. So if I just go back, you see on the obverse, you've got the picture of a face, so that's on the saints. There's usually St. Peter and St. Paul, and then on the reverse, you've got the Pope's name. So you can just see the BA, so that was the Pope Urban. You've got the latter half of his name. So as I say, they just became standardised to stop or look out for any forgeries. Next object, as I say, we mainly record objects over 300 years old, but sometimes we record younger objects that might have kind of local significance. This was a silver tobacco holder, and it's got a hallmark, so we could trace it back to the maker in Birmingham. So we've had things like Cadbury's tokens or workhouse tokens, or tokens with, we've had our cinema tokens. So as I say, sometimes we do record objects that are younger with a local significance. So just going further afield now, so objects I'll show you are from across kind of Midlands area. I don't know if anyone saw this one recently. It was doing a tour of the country, and so it was found up in Shropshire. Initially it was on display in Ludlow, and then it's been doing a bit of a tour across the country. And it's called the Shropshire Sun Pendant, so it's bronze age and date. So it would have been worn like a necklace, like a pendant, worn around the neck. And then the site that it's been discovered, like I say, the find spot is just as important as the object. It's a very watery place. I'll show you the next object. There are also some gold lock rings, which possibly were used like for hair braids. There's some discussion about what they were actually used for. But you can see they're wrapped in lead. As I say, it's a watery place, so the thought is that they were wrapped in lead. Obviously it's heavy, so they would sink to the bottom. So it's quite a significant kind of ritual site where things were being deposited, perhaps a gift to the gods, perhaps in the hope for a good crop, or we'll obviously never know, but there's obviously something significant going on that site. Most of the objects, so a lot of the objects that come into us are broken, they're fragmentary, so obviously it's part of our job to work out what they are. So the object that was recorded is on the top left, so it's part of a terret ring. So a terret is a circular ring, and if you had a chariot or a cart and you had two probably ponies, and then have a wooden yoke that strung them together, and then you'd have the reins that passed through those loops. And so this is a terret that would have decorated a terret ring. I'll say it's a fragment of a terret ring. So it would have helped guide the ponies that were guiding the chariot. And the image on the top right is from, you can just about make it out, it was from a burial in France. There have been some chariot burials in Yorkshire as well. But it's a burial in France where the horse was buried and then you can see the terret rings in situ on the top of the horse. This was a small brooch assemblage, so found near Stratford on Avon. So they're often associated with female burials, so they're ring brooches. The pin is separate in this case, and they would have been used to fasten a cloak together or an outer garment. And these ones are made from copper alloy, and then they've been gilded as well. We've got a different type of brooch, a cruciform brooch, also dating from a similar period. These are quite large in size. You can get really large ones. I saw one in the Oldham Museum recently in Evesham. So the thought is that they were to fasten outer garments, perhaps the sorts of brooches on smaller garments, and then the larger ones on a bigger, heavier cloak. This is a strange one that was reported to us during lockdown, and someone discovered it in their garden. It's been sent to a specialist in Glasgow University to try and understand what it says, or if it says anything at all. So it's an Ogham stone, predominantly found in Ireland. There has been a case of a folding knife handle that was discovered in Norfolk with a similar inscription. So as yet, we don't know what it says. We're just obviously still waiting, even after lockdown, we're still waiting to discover what it says. So we hope it says something. Another brooch, you can probably tell that I like brooches. So we've got an early medieval brooch here, and this is unusual that the parallel was found in Ireland. So obviously a kind of import that was coming in, and it's very stylised. I need a bit stick so I can point. But at the bottom you've got a snout. So often from that period you see brooches and strap fittings that have got kind of beasts and animals on them. So at the bottom you've got a snout and you've got the nostrils, and then it extends onto the body. This is believed to be a pointer, so it's in the shape of perhaps a fish, and then it would have had a kind of stick that extended from it, and this is the pointer to help you keep your page on your manuscript as you are reading it. And it was also found near another one which was unusual, so in the same field a couple of things covered together. Obviously this one was treasure, so this one would go through the treasure process because it's over 300 years old and predominantly made of precious metal. So this is a penny of Cohen-Wolf. So the largest coin type on our database, type of coin are Roman coins. So we see the largest number of Roman coins, and then post-medieval coins, and then so this is slightly unusual. This dates from Cohen-Wolf, who was a descendant of King Penda. So the thinking is that the Staffordshire hoard was perhaps kind of war booty that was discovered. Sorry, I'm just being distracted. Can you hear me okay? Is it all right? Yeah, the Staffordshire hoard was potentially war booty linked to King Penda. So Cohen-Wolf is a descendant of his. We've got stirrup strap fitting, so as I say, we see lots of coins, buckles, strap fittings, belt buckles, tokens. This one's slightly damaged, but you might be able to make out that there's like a lion. We've just got the top of his head is damaged. So that would have mounted a stirrup, obviously on the horse. This is a small purse loss discovered near Coventry. So these are short cloth pennies dating to the time of Henry II and John, and these have been donated to the Herbert Museum in Coventry, to go and see them on display there. So I was just going to say these particular examples of they were minted in London, Canterbury, Lincoln. So the way we identify them is on the reverse. You have a money's name, and then you have the place where they were minted, and then you have the king's name on the obverse. This is a lead seal, so it's used to seal documents. So it's can't quite see it, so it's inverted. So when you press it into the wax, it would create an impression. And we found quite a few that can be identified to women. You find lots of women's names on them. So they identify kind of 12th, date from the 12th, 13th century. This one, so this one's the seal of David, this one says. But we do have lots with women's names on. So the idea that perhaps that women were illiterate in the period can kind of be wiped out the picture, because we do find lots and lots of seals with women's names on. So they were obviously writing themselves and important enough to be sealing their own documents. And this is a harness pendant, so you can see it's a bit corroded. You've got the blue enamel, which is corroded on it. So that would have been used to decorate a horse, so you could show your allegiance to your king or to your lord. So they would decorate a strap on a horse. It's kind of horse bling. So they were made from copper alloy, and then they've been enamelled. And this one we were able to identify the coat of arms, as you'll see. So that it's always interesting if we can link them back to a specific person. This is an ampulla, so again it's made of lead. So when people went on pilgrimage to the holy sites, they brought back the holy water in these ampulla. So the ones we usually see are the smaller ones on the bottom left-hand corner. But this is quite a large one, a costrol, so it's shaped like a water flask. So you go to the holy site, collect your holy water, then bring it back, and we do find lots and lots of them. Obviously the nature of metal detectors, they're out in rural areas. So they were brought back to the field, and they would be broken, so you could sprinkle the holy water on your crop, or a wish for a good crop that year. You may have seen this one, a big bit of gold bling that was found in North Warwickshire. So it's linked to Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. So you've got the H and the K initials intertwined, and also the rose, the white and the red rose for Henry VIII, and the pomegranate for Catherine of Aragon. So this came in kind of just before COVID and lockdown. Sent down to the British Museum, and at first they just thought it can't be real. It's just never seen anything like it. So obviously they had kind of 2 years to research it. And the thinking now is that it didn't actually belong to them, it didn't actually belong to Henry and Catherine, but it was possibly a tournament prize. And they found in researching it that similar items were made as tournament prizes, and often made in haste. So there's records where they were asking for tournament prizes to be made by a goldsmith within 4 months. And although it obviously looks very beautiful and shiny to us, there are some, there's a bit of kind of shoddy workmanship that's gone into the hinges, so the hinges are slightly misaligned. And so they thought perhaps it could have been made in haste, and it was perhaps meant to just be viewed from a distance. So it was in the press that it was probably given from Henry to Catherine, but the idea is that it probably wasn't. It was possibly given as a tournament prize where they were attending, but it wasn't given to either Henry or Catherine. I should say that hopefully it's been to Treasure Inquest, hopefully the Warwickshire Museum, so Warwick Museum in the centre of Warwick will hopefully acquire it. So there'll probably be a big kind of fundraising event to try and raise the money to purchase that so it can stay locally. This is a silver hawking ring. So the hawking rings were on the leather jetty which was attached to the hawk, and it was a very, very popular pastime in the 17th century. So this one was interesting because we were able to identify it because it's got the name on it. It's Lord Rabadon. And they held land in Netherwhitker. So I just had to check my notes, but Netherwhitker in Warwickshire. So we were able to trace the hawking ring to the family. And one of the Lord Rabadons also held, he was High Sheriff, so obviously quite a high status family. This is my last find that I'll show you. So it's a gold coin, which is obviously nice in itself, but you'll see it's got the kind of folds either side. So we often get coins that are bent out of shape, and predominantly they're bent into an S shape, and they were given as love tokens. So sometimes we get coins that come into us, sometimes they're worn smooth, and people have written messages on them, sometimes read words on them, and then they're bent into an S shape, and the idea is that they were given as a kind of to your betrothed. So the worst thing is we want to hear is when a detector just comes in and say, oh, I had this coin and it was a bit bent, so I decided to straighten it out, and we go, no, don't do that. So I thought that's quite a nice one to finish on. Just saying, if anyone would like to come and volunteer with me, we do have volunteering opportunities. If you'd like to record objects, photograph them, do the digital image manipulation, if anyone's with Photoshop, we always need people to help us out. We record kind of in the area of about 3,000 finds per year, and as I say, they all need to be photographed. And we deal with about 100 treasure cases per year as well. Across the country, England and Wales, we deal with around about 1,000 treasure cases per year. That's me. If you want to contact me, all the objects that I showed you, they have a unique reference number, and that's how to find them on our database. So if you're interested in any particular objects, I can give you the reference number so you can go and look at that yourself and find more information or come and ask me. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.